Right, so first thing we need to do is make a switch. So we'll start with the blueprint class, actor, and let's call this blueprint switch. Open that up. We're just going to keep things simple, and we're just going to add a static mesh and the cube and give it a colour, in this case chrome. And that's it for now. I'll just drag that into the world. So at the moment nothing happens, so the first thing we need to implement is how does the player interact with the switch. So the simplest way to do this is a box collision. So we'll just scale this up so we can see it. There we go. And if we scroll down to here, we can see on component begin overlap. So with the box collision selected, select the event on component begin overlap. So whenever an actor touches this, it will do a thing. So let's do print string switch is activated, just so we can test that it works. Okay, so player moves towards the switch and we get the message switch is activated. Excellent. So the next thing we need to do is create a light. So back into blueprint class, actor, and let's call this one blueprint light. Go into that, and again let's add a static mesh. This time let's choose cone and give it a color gold. And now we need to add let's add a spotlight. I'm just going to keep it simple, just going to rotate that round. Oops. Move it down to the bottom. And give it a nice strong colour so we can see exactly what it is. And good way of getting a boost of light without extending the attenuation radius is to use inverse square fall off. So let's just test if that works. Drag it into the world. There we go, nice and bright. Okay, it's very obvious. But for now, I want to take that down to 0, so effectively the light is off. And we want our switch to turn it on. So, back in our switch, we need to do more than just print a string. We want it to turn on the light. So now we need something new. We need an interface. So we come down to blueprints, and then you come down to blueprint interface. And we're going to call this one interactions. Now, an interface is really an interface library. We've got a list of functions on the side. Very, very basic. You can't do anything in the graph. So we're going to give this a name and we're going to call it triggered. Okay, and we can see we can actually have many of these. So let's just, for the sake of it, give us another one and we'll call it alternate triggered. Only thing you can really do at this point is you can add inputs and outputs, but we'll come back to that later. Right, back into our switch, we can now choose triggered, and we can see both of those interfaces are there, and we want triggered message. So what this is going to do is send a message to the target. Now what's the target? Well, the target in this case is our light. But how do we give it a reference? So now we need a variable. So let's call this actor to trigger. Now we want this to be of type actor, The reason for this is most things in the world are derived from actors. This will give us the greatest flexibility when choosing blueprints to interact with. We want to make it public. At the moment, see, that does not happy. It's we need to drag this in and connect it up to target. Excellent. But we still need to be able to tell it to trigger our light. So if we select our switch, go into details, we'll see now we have an actor to trigger. That variable is public, so we can see it here, and you can select anything that's in the level. Or an easy way is to use the eyedropper and just select our light. So that is now the actor it's going to send a message to. And it is doing so, but at the moment we've not given the light blueprint anything to do when it receives that message. So let's do that now. Back into blueprint light in the event graph. Let's get rid of all these things we don't need. And go into class settings, and you will see that there's a section called interfaces. So we go add, and you might think we're looking for triggered, but we're not. We're looking for the interface library, which is called interactions. There it is. Okay, and then we can see on the left we've got a little area called interfaces, and we can see both of those individual interfaces, and we can use either of those as we see fit. So now if we right click and search for triggered, you'll see that there's an event triggered. Now this means if you receive the message from the interface triggered, do this event. So let's do a thing. Let's print string light is on. Let's bring the spotlight in. We want to actually turn it on, so let's set intensity. There we go. Connect those up and give it a value. Nice and bright. Make it 5000. Pile save. And let's test that out. So switch is on, switch is activated, light is on, and the spotlight has actually come on. Excellent. That is interfaces in a nutshell. But let's extend the functionality a little bit further. So back into our interfaces, we can go to our triggered interface, add an input, which defaults to float, which is just what we want, and let's call that intensity. Back into switch, we can see that now the interface message has an option for intensity, which we can use. So let's promote that to variable and leave it as intensity and make it public. And let's set a default value of 1000. Then we can see that the event triggered now as an intensity output, which we can connect straight up to set intensity. Looking at the switch in the world, we can see we can set the intensity for this particular switch. So let's set it to 4000 and test that out. Excellent, that works. Just to prove the point, let's set it to a much lower number. Yep, that is working. So it gives you much greater control over what the switch is actually going to do. Okay, so what we've created is something that can be used multiple times. So let's show that in action now. Let's just duplicate this switch and also duplicate the light. Okay, so this switch is going to operate this light, and the new switch on the right is going to operate the new light. And let's choose an intensity to test it out on 5000. Let's play that to activate first light, activate second light. Excellent. And of course you can have as many of those as you like. Let's extend the functionality of the switch a little bit more. So if we select the collision box, scroll down to events and go to end overlap. Let's copy this code here, plug that in, move the intensity, so that intensity is now 0, so effectively moving away from the switch is going to turn the light off. So it's sending the message again, but with this time a float value of 0, so effectively we can turn the light on and off. You change it how you want. That could be a flip-flop, or it could do something completely different on end overlap. Okay, but we're not limited to just using this for our light, so let's create a new blueprint. Let's call it Blueprint Spinny. Open that up. Here we go. Let's add another static mesh. I'll just make it a cube. Give it material. Oop. Try that again. Gold. There we go. And let's give it the rotating component. Rotating movement. And let's set that value to 0 for now. We don't want it to be spinning when we start. Let's get rid of all this code that we don't want. Back into class settings, give it the interface, which is interactions. And now we need to right click, select triggered, and we want the event triggered. Let's do things, get our rotating movement, and let's find a rotation. I don't want get, I want set, so rotation, set. Let's break that rotation down into float. Rotation rate coming out of the intensity. So now we're using the intensity for something different. Well, that's the flexibility of the interface. And let's set it up. Let's bring that into the world. Let's choose our actor to trigger as the Blueprint Spinny. The editor was perfectly happy with that because it's also an actor. And let's set the intensity to 180. So we approach the switch, the correct switch. There we are, it's spinning. Move away, it stops spinning. Because we've still got that functionality in the switch. Now as we move away, set that float value to 0, which in the case of the spinny thing will stop it from spinning. That is basic interfacing, and by keeping things flexible we can use it against a variety of blueprints. That's all for now, folks. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.